much, except for the opening song.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want a music stand or do you prefer?
No, I think, I like it to just be like right here.
Okay.
It's a little easier. I am trying to follow along, you know.
Do you want me to try to
And
get something
this,
for
too.
here? But it's kind of far away from me.
Yeah.
Barbara liked it here too.
Yeah.
But sometimes she liked it on the thing.
Very good. 3.5
Depending.
hours long.
All right, I'll meditate.
3.5 hours long. Yeah, there was the break. Really wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Hi Brenda. Shabbat Shalom. Next week is the visual service. In person.
That's what I'm missing.
I'll show you. And it's going to be, not live streamed. You got to have to come in person.
That's right. Why are you missing? I am speaking via Zoom in a synagogue in Baltimore. I've been speaking about 2 or 3 times a week in various synagogues around the country. Oh, so somebody can get the next part of my 50th anniversary. Love that. What's your topic? My life.
Hi guys. Shabbat Shalom.
My life is around.
Sit in the second row and the third row. Those are the best lines of sight. Yeah, sit on the outside because you have to make an exit.
Yes, please.
Nice suit. Wow. That's a great suit.
Check the stream. How are you doing, Matt? Good.
So, good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is good to see faces. Something important's happening tomorrow morning, right? Yeah. Okay. You will hear more about that at some point this evening, but Matthew will be celebrating becoming bar mitzvah in the morning. So, with that, it's great that we can be together. We will be using tonight Mishkan Tefillah. It's the blue book in front of you, or if you're in a front row of a back section, it's underneath you. I'd like, before we begin, to just take a second to ask you, close your eyes. Just close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath. This last year and a half, breathing has been a real issue. So many not being able to because of the pandemic. And for so many of us, we take the ability to breathe for granted. So take a couple of deep breaths, and I want you to be able to say thank you that you can, and not just go through the motions because you expect that you'll be able to. And it's in that spirit that we will ask, we'll call the angels, we'll ask the guardian angels to come and bless this Shabbat and call on us to bless each other in it.
So our opening prayer, as Rabbi said, is on page 142 in your blue prayer book. And it is a fable about angels that accompany us on our journey. And this melody is very joyous. It sounds a lot like some contemporary melody. After we're done singing it, you'll say, oh yeah, it does sound like that. But it's very repetitive, and I'm sure you will know it immediately by singing along. Page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech. What's wrong?
Shalom Aleichem.
There you go.
We're not starting yet. Sorry.
There we go. Shalom Aleichem.
Yeah.
Shalom. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Here we go. We're going to start with La La.
Try this too.
Here we go. This part you'll definitely know. La 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 la. La 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 la. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. La 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 la. La 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 la. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. La 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 la. La 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 la. Bubby, I knew you'd be into it. So does that remind you of us? Can you remember what song reminds you of? Some of you might be a little too young. Those were the days, right? Not like not from Archie and Edith, not those days, but like there was a song, Those Were the Days. So
So, Matthew, you're going to come up to light candles, and I've asked Brenda Tuller, as a member of this congregation and the grandmother of our most recent bar mitzvah, to be up here with your family, because I'm going to ask your family to come up. Okay? We need family representatives. You don't want to stand up here with them? Okay. I like community, but it's time. So I need you up here. I need you up here.
Come on over here. We're on page 120.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled the light, so we may in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
You get a glass. It's grape juice. You're safe, okay? It's grape juice. You could use it.
The heaven and earth were finished in all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing. And God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho behava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lama'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehila lamikra'e kodesh zeher l'tziyah mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kedashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodecha behava v'ratzon hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen. Can I have a sip? L'chaim.
You want to share? Is there any left? Okay, just put the glass down. Good job.
Looking forward to it, Marc.
We're going to continue on page 146. I'll ask that we please rise.
Le'olam ba'ed
Page 149, please join me at the top. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and seasons glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Page 152.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch she'kevod malchuto le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated.
From page 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובמלאכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי ויתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקי הים לפני משה מרים, זה לינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. ונאמר כפות אדוני יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
We continue celebrating this wonderful day of Shabbat. We're on page 162.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת בלי נפש, שבת בלי נפש, שבת בלי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
On page 164, we move from the first part of the service of appreciation and incredible blessings in our world to a place where we crawl inside and we start thinking about what we can do to pass them on to those who come after us. So for tefillah, for prayer, we rise, please.
Adonai sevatai tivta ufi hagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanara, Eliyod, Omer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zoher Chasei Avot v'Imahot, Mevi'u l'adifnei b'neihem, L'man Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechei kol atah, Rab le'Hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim v'chesed, Mechayei hakol v'rachamim rabim, Somech noflim d'ofek v'hodim, Umatir asurim, Umekayim emunato, Lishenei hafar, Michamocha ba'al givurot, Umidam melach, Nemech meimit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kdoshim b'chol yom yehallelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ahil hakadosh.
Please be seated. So, for all of us old people, I'll let you decide who that includes and who that doesn't. But how many of us have ever said, if I'd only known then what I know now? Okay?
Does it mean I'm old if I admit to saying that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it hit me the other day that had I known then what I know now, I wouldn't have had half the fun that I had. Right? So sometimes we're thankful for unanswered prayers. And I think that's often one of them. We wish our lives away and we forget that who we are is because of everything that we've experienced and everything that we've been. And so it's great. It would be great if we learned to say thank you to each other for all of the things that we do for each other. But at some point, we also have to say thank you to ourselves for the things that we've allowed ourselves to go through and learn from, so that we could be who we are with the blessings that we have and the challenges we've overcome. So in that spirit, we know that if we could only think better of ourselves, and as we read the Yom Kippur liturgy and it's I'm sorry for this and I'm not worthy of that, we forget of all the incredible things that we are and that we bring and that we experience, and certainly the things that we should be doing to take care of appreciating ourselves along the way. Take just a brief moment, and then we're going to pray for peace, because that can only happen when we are really at home with ourselves so that we can appreciate each other better.
We're on page 178. Our song of peace, asking for a large peace to come down upon us.
Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarich et amcha Yisrael. V'holit u'v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim, Tasim Le'olam. Tasim, Tasim Le'olam.
We look for that day when we can say that peace is real. Take another moment, if you would, and think about ways that you can bring something new into somebody's life. Somebody that you've not talked to a while, someone you have talked to, maybe not in the ways that we would appreciate best. But let's bring something new into each other's lives.
Oseh shalom b'ramah,
So if a voice in the wind called to you and said, get up and leave everything that you feel is comfortable and go on a journey, and the voice in the wind that you've never talked to before says, oh, and by the way, I'll take care of you. How many of us are willing to take that leap of faith and drop everything behind and go? A couple of us. And so that's what happens at the beginning of this week's Torah portion. We learned about Avram, who later will be called Abraham, but we learned about Avram earlier, and what we heard is he was born. His dad is Terach, and he's born. And then chapter 12 of Genesis, where this week's portion begins, we pick up the storyline, and 75 years later, God calls Abraham. Nothing else in between. No other experience. So we have to remember, all three major Western religions all hallow this guy. So Abraham is the first Jew, he's the first Muslim, and he's the first Christian. Don't be excited that none of those three religions actually existed at the time. That's a mere technicality. But yet, all point to this guy because out of the blue, he hears this voice and trusts it and takes this leap of faith and goes on a journey. Some people would question his sanity. Our tradition reveres this. And yet, our tradition goes to great lengths to try to rationalize this action. So what happens in those 75 years that allows or affords him the opportunity or obligates him to follow? And so there's volumes of midrash, rabbinic stories, about what fills the first 75 years of Abraham's life. Some of my favorites. When he's born, evil King Nimrod heard that a child was born who was going to supplant him. And so he sent his soldiers out to find this child and kill this child. So Terach, wanting to preserve his life son, puts him in a cave by himself. And then you ask, well, how does he sustain himself? Well, is anything too powerful for God? You know, there's a window of flour, and there's a window of water, and from the age of birth until 3 or 4, depending on who's telling the story, Abraham mixes that flour with that water and makes perfectly well, nutritioned protein cakes for himself to keep him going. And then he gets news that Nimrod is gone, and he emerges from the cave, and he looks at the sun, and he says, wow, this sun up there, it's giving such light and warmth, it must be God. Until nighttime, when the moon supplants the sun, and Abraham says, or Avram says, well, the moon must be God because it supplanted the sun. And by the next morning, when the sun comes back, at the age of 4, wise old Abe says, neither the sun nor the moon are God. There must be a God that controls them both. Are you impressed? Yeah, at 4 years old, I was really impressed, okay? And then Nimrod somehow comes back, and there's another story where he puts Abraham in a fiery furnace to kill him. And rather than burn up in the furnace turns into beautiful flower beds. Third story, Midrash, and this is probably the most famous. Terach owns an idol shop. They make idols. And Avram, as a teenager, is working there. And, anybody ever heard that teenagers can be snarky? No. Never, right? Yeah. So Dad goes away for a little while and leaves snarky teenager Avram in charge, and a mighty warrior comes in and says, I need to have a God mighty like me. And Avram points out this large idol and says, this one is mighty like you. And the guy says, great, pays for it, takes it, and as he's walking out the door, Avram looks at him and says, isn't it just really crazy that somebody as mighty as you needs to have a piece of stone to make you feel important? At which point, he throws the idol back at Avram. And then an older, petite lady comes in and says, I am small and petite, and I need a God just like me. At which point, Avram looks up at the top shelf, and there's this little tiny idol, and pulls it off and gives it to her, and she's happy. And as she's walking out the door, he says, isn't it just horrible that you have no faith beyond a little piece of stone? That's all you think you're valuable for. At which point, she throws it at him. At that point, in utter frustration, he smashes all the idols. Dad comes back and looks at the business that has now been destroyed, and what happened? And Avram looks at his dad and says, well, it was time for dinner, and you left me in charge, so I had to feed the idols. And as I was going to serve this one, that one got really upset that he wasn't getting fed first, and they started fighting, and they destroyed each other. And Terach looks at his son and says, they're pieces of stone. At which point he says, do your ears hear what your mouth is saying? And that was the end of the idol business. God is God. So the rabbis have to create all these stories to somehow demonstrate that Avram had these experiences, that when the voice came, that he knew who was calling. My problem is that really demonstrates a lack of faith, that you somehow have to prove that something is real before we're willing to take that leap. How many of you have people to whom you are close? Now, did someone have to make up stories and prove to you time after time again, or was there a reason you started wanting to find each other's company to begin with? Okay? And when you first laid eyes on each other or heard from each other or got each other's message over one of the dating apps, I want to make sure I cover all bounds, okay? There was something intangible that said I should respond. You didn't need the resume up front to respond. It was a spiritual awakening. And within the text, within the Torah text, we get all the information we really need for why Avram is ready, just because of who he is. His name is a play on the word Ivri. By the way, the word Hebrew in Hebrew is Ivrit. The word Ever means to cross over or transcend, something over there. Ever Hayardain, we're talking about when we have to cross the River Jordan to get into the Promised Land. So built into Avram's name is this notion that he transcends. And so there's a Hasidic teaching that says God wasn't calling him to get up and geographically leave. It was, hey, you, businessman, you're so stuck in the books and the dollars you're bringing in, because Avram had amassed a fortune, we're told in the text. He says, why don't you think about something transcendent? Why don't you figure out the value and the blessing of being? Get over yourself. Ever get over yourself. At the age of 75, he had an epiphany. And you don't need some other rabbi to show you another story somewhere else to be able to see that right there in what's given to us in the text. And that's why all of the different religions point to this person, because that is the beginning of every spiritual journey. This notion of wherever you are, whatever age you are, whatever you're doing, you figure out that there's something a whole lot more important. Meaning that there's value to living, not just the existence of living. When you say today, I'm a spiritual person, we go, oh, how nice. Right? But the reality is, if you can be someone beyond what you do every day, or if you can provide into every day some meaning that goes beyond the transaction, that's where life begins to be valuable. When we have sacred relationships with friends, with partners, with spouses, with our children, grandchildren, we don't root those in, what did you do for me today? And there's no way to quantify the value of those relationships. To say, I love my mom 7 versus 9 is a ridiculous statement. It just is. And yet so many of us run from spirituality because it's scary, it's not tangible, it's not provable. And yet, we all know that life without it just doesn't matter. If there's someone you love, it matters. And none of us lack faith in the real world. We don't want to admit to it, but I love talking to teenagers and say, did you do your homework today? Yes. Why? I have to turn it in tomorrow. What makes you think there's a tomorrow? They look at me like I'm crazy. I said, so you're going to do your homework and you're going to iron your clothes and you're going to make your lunch and you're going to do everything to prepare for a tomorrow you can't prove will exist. To hand things into a teacher you don't know will be there. Everything we do is a leap of faith, and yet we don't want to admit it. So I implore us, take a couple steps back, and let's stop taking even what we would call the mundane things in life for granted, because truly none of it is mundane. And all of it is simply miraculous that it happens. That we have the faith to believe that there will be a tomorrow, that the people we love today will be able to love again and continue. That we wake up in our bed and believe it's the same house we went to sleep in. All of those things sound silly to talk about, and yet it's who we are and who we cherish being. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue with the Torah service. Please rise.
Susharim Rosheichem V'chinasu Pitchei Olam V'yavo Melech HaKavod V'hu Ze Melech HaKavod Adonai Tzvaot U'hu Melech HaKavod Selah Hu Melech HaKavod Selah Selah Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Lecha Adonai HaGedula HaGevura HaTiferet VeHaNetzach VeHaHod Ki Chol Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Ki Chol Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Lecha Adonai HaBalacha Avinasi Lechol Rosh.
Hello, please be seated. We are reading Parshat Lech Lecha. It is in the red plout commentary on page 91. And Peter Zaslow, come on down, please. We'd like to honor you at Torah, if that's okay. Okay.
Okay. Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bacha Bonu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. All right. This should sound familiar to somebody. Vayomer Adonai el Avram
לך לך, מארצך וממולדתך, מבית אביך, אל הארץ אשר אראך, ואעשך לגוי גדול, ואברכך וגדלה שמך, ויהי ברכה, ברכה מברכך, ומחללך אור, נברכו בך כל משפחות האדמה.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayenu olam nitafeh b'tachenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. You
Been
made
a
it.
while.
Great job.
Good.
Great job. Please rise. Thank you, Peter.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. לי לי לי
We take a few moments to think about those who are in need of prayers for healing and for restoration, those suffering from illnesses and injuries that keep them from enjoying the fullness of life, those who are suffering from the ferocity of nature and the inhumanity that we occasion on each other. Particular to this community, family, and our friends, we're thinking of Rabbi Robert Orrock, James Appio, Vicki Bernstein, Michael Marks, Scott Kline, Helene Rothman, Bobby Goldstein, and Lois Wilkes. And if there's anyone else that you're holding in prayer, let us know who that is so that we as a congregation can include them in ours.
Mark Alexander, Josh Stein,
Catherine Abate, Louise Melman, Christine Chaplinski.
Howard Cloud.
Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. God, please help us to become instruments of healing in people's lives.
Our prayer for healing is found on page 371, the Blue Prayer Book.
מי שבהירח אבותינו, בקור הברכה לאמותינו, may the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. מי שבהירח אמותינו, מקור הברכה לאבותינו, those in need of healing, with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We'll return the Torah to the ark.
Page 374.
It's Chaim hi למחזיקמה וטוב בחרה מאושר דרכיה לחינוך וכל נתיבותיך שלום. השיבנו אדוני
We continue with our Aleinu prayer on page 586. It's Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tei gedula leotzei b'reishit, shehunu t'shamayim b'yotzei haaretz, moshav yikaro b'shamayim b'mahal, u'shchinat uzo b'govhei meromim, hu Eloheinu Enon, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Livnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch V'nemar v'chaya Adonai Lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo
People leave our hands, but never our hearts, and they continue to hold us and impact us long after we no longer have them to walk with and to celebrate with. And so the beauty of our tradition is that we accept that there is never an end to a life until someone is forgotten. And so we continue to recall the blessings they shared with us along life's paths, knowing sometimes that even if there's no one left in a family line, that they've still touched our community. And so the 62 years of Monmouth Reformed Temple, there have been a lot of people who've sat in these pews. And we may not know who they were, but we couldn't be today were it not for their life, their involvement, and their love for this family. And so it is with our wider communities in the world. So we recall names of people who finished their earthly course this week in years past. Harry Bronstein, Ruth Brenner, Maxine Bick, Theodore Conbria, Jim Cook, Sadie Finkelstein, Dora Friedman, Betty Hankin, Suzanne Kretzmer, Miriam Cradell, Nancy Krupit, Clara Miller, Robert Recknitz, Renee Schoen, Gerald G. Silverman, Murray Weiss, and Murray Wenig. Are there annual yortsites that we need to add to our list tonight? We are in Shiva for Lawrence Weinstein, Zichronam Livracha. May the memories that they leave to us always lead us to blessing. Kaddish is on page 598. Yitgedal v'yitkedash shemei Rabba, Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chai echon v'yom echon, Uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, B'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha richu. Le'elam in kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yeshlei shlomo Rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Seated. Except for you.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Amy Sukanik, and Shabbat Shalom. On behalf of Monmouth Reformed Temple, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us tonight. We have some announcements for this evening. Check the weekly e-blast for more information on the following events. Torah study tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. is the bar mitzvah of Matthew Secular. Mazel tov to Matthew and the family. On Sunday, October 17th at 10 a.m., join the MRT Sisterhood for the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk in Long Branch. All are invited to walk. Registration is required. Join us next Friday, October 22nd, for our first visual worship service for the year. Our October Tzedakah collection is supporting the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. HIAS is a Jewish-American nonprofit organization that provides humanitarian aid and assistance to refugees. For more than 130 years, HIAS has been helping refugees rebuild their lives in safety and dignity. For the protection of our MRT family, please stay home if you feel sick or believe you have been exposed to COVID. Our synagogue continues to engage together in meaningful ways. We would love for more people to invest in our mission of helping others and connecting as a Jewish community. We welcome your investment and gift to help us continue to grow. For information on joining our MRT family or making a donation, please contact Jordana Steinberg in our office or visit our website, www.monmouthreformtemple.org. Rabbi and Cantor are always available as well. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Amy. So, Shabbat Shalom. So next Friday, as Amy said, is the first visual service that we've had in at least 18 months. It's the service, if you've never been to it, where we do it in the social hall. We bring down the big screen. All the images are artistic and projected, and it's in person. It won't be live streamed. And we work very hard on it, and we would love for all of you to come back next Friday and everyone else to come to this service. We think it's special, and we hope you'll join us.
It really is, and Danny Kahn will be with us.
Yes, Dan will help us lead the music. Yep.
So, yeah, it's a really it's a wonderful experience. And
We're excited about it.
you know, it's an opportunity to read new and refreshing things and to be in a completely different environment, and it's quite the beautiful experience. So with that, tomorrow morning, yeah, Matthew, you're up, right? You ready for that? Yeah, quite the young man. We're going to close tonight. Cantor?
Okay, our closing prayer is Adon Olam, which is on page 625 of your prayer book. It's one that's that you, I sing, you sing, I sing, you sing. So this group is going to do really well. Also, Rabbi Kline and I and our congregation want to thank Evan Courtney for doing a beautiful job. This is only the third time Evan has played in our synagogue. You're doing a great job, Evan, and we congratulate you. So great job. I know. We're really proud of you. And he'll be here tomorrow morning. So here is our closing prayer, Adon Olam. Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, B'chefso Kol. Together. Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'acharei Kichlot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nara Adon Olam, V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoveh, V'hu Yeh B'tifara Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, B'chefso Kol. Together. Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Echad, V'yein Sheni, L'ham Shilon L'hachbira Adon Olam, V'li Reshit, V'li Tachlit, V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'mizra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Li'et Nasa, B'chefso Kol. Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Eli, V'chai Goli, V'tzor Hevli V'yetzara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, U'man Osli, Minakosi V'yam
Adon Olam, Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Hashem Malach,
Hashem Malach,
B'terem Kol,
Terem Kol,
Yitzir Nira,
Yitzir Nira,
Le'ed Nasa,
Yed Nasa,
V'chefso Kol,
V'chefsa Kol,
Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, B'yado, Mafkid Ruchi, B'yeti Sham B'ya'ira Adon Olam, B'yimruchi, Kiviati, Adonai Le'velo Ira Adon Olam. All right, this is your last chance, okay? We're ready? Okay. Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Hashem Malach, B'terem Kol,
Terem Kol,
Yitzir Nira, Le'ed Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam.
I have every reason to believe that an upcoming B'nai Mitzvah in a couple of years, I know what the closing song is going to be. So,
I'm looking forward to everything.
as we will leave this place, I hope that we take the joy and spirit that we have shared with each other on our way. I hope that we share those blessings with others as we walk through this world. May the wake that we leave be one of grace and compassion and love, and may we engage each other in new ways for the blessing of all. And so with that, we are going to do that which is most Jewish. And Cantor?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
John, you want to be in charge?
I was
You're so good at this.